Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, going to be going through my final predictions for the upcoming Nevada caucus, and I'm going to continue to make these first, second, and third place predictions on how I feel the popular vote is going to play out in every single race that we have throughout the 2020 Democratic primary season, and then after the fact, going through where I went right and where I went wrong with these predictions. Now, caucuses are a little bit more complicated than the straightforward primaries, but in terms of the popular vote, the standard that I'm going to continue to use is the result that we get for the final alignment. And then also, beyond just this content, going to continue to update you guys on where the polls are at and as quickly as possible recapping the results from these races. So if this is content that interests you and you're not already, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. So as you can see with the first two states, I wasn't able to get 100% in either instance. I was able to get 1 out of 3 in Iowa and then 2 out of 3 in New Hampshire. Maybe this is a trend showing that maybe I can take another step forward in Nevada, but I am a little bit skeptical at this point given the difficulty I've had trying to come up with who I think is going to get second and third place respectively in this Nevada race. You can really make a strong argument for any of the 5 candidates that are behind Bernie Sanders that they could finish in that range, and I'm going to be doing a bit of a discussion talking about these candidates and their pros and cons for potentially succeeding or failing in the state. But I want to just quickly start off here with my number one first place option. I think it's a pretty straightforward bet at this point that Bernie Sanders is going to go on and claim first place in Nevada. And I think really the discussion to be had is the margin of victory that Sanders might be able to obtain. Now, Sanders was able to pick up the popular vote win in both Iowa and New Hampshire, but it was very close and competitive at the top with Pete Buttigieg. Of course, the Buttigieg campaign put a ton of effort and resources into having success in those first 2 states so that it could propel them forward and potentially have more success after that. But I don't think Pete Buttigieg is going to be quite the same level of competitor to Sanders in Nevada, given it's a state that has a bit more diversity, and Buttigieg hasn't been able to prove that he can have success with a more diverse voting coalition. So I think Buttigieg is likely to take somewhat of a step back here heading into Nevada. And then also Sanders, he consistently has the most enthusiastic and committed supporters, which is really important to having success in something like a caucus, which is a bit more difficult to participate in contrast to a primary. And just primary season in general, you really need to get people enthusiastic about coming out and supporting you. That's how you have success. We've seen the opposite on Joe Biden's side of things, where even though the polls have suggested that he could finish somewhere in that upper tier, given the fact that his voters aren't extremely enthusiastic about going out and voting for him, he ends up vastly underperforming what the polls were indicating in both Iowa and New Hampshire. We'll see if he's able to have a little bit more success in Nevada, which is certainly a possibility for Biden, given the fact that Nevada has an older voter coalition that he might be able to tap into. Also, the fact that Biden polls better among the more diverse blocks of the Democratic electorate as opposed to some of his other challengers in that centrist lane, those other options being individuals like Buttigieg and Klobuchar. So we'll see if Biden is able to take that step forward. But then just to run through the rest of the candidates here, you have Amy Klobuchar. Surprised everyone with what she was able to do in New Hampshire. She parlayed a very strong debate performance into surging in the polls right heading into that New Hampshire primary. Surprised a lot of people. We'll see if she's able to carry that momentum over into Nevada. But kind of like Pete Buttigieg, I'm a bit skeptical on Klobuchar's ability to appeal to a more diverse electorate. We haven't seen it from either of those individuals in the polls, and I think that will probably translate to them not having as much success potentially over there in Nevada. And then you have Tom Steyer, who has put a ton of effort into resources to try to have success in the final 2 early caucus and primary states of Nevada and South Carolina. We'll see if his strategy pays off. We've definitely seen a lot of polls that have shown Tom Steyer in that upper tier of contention, but I'm also skeptical with Steyer because his support is based on ad buys, and I don't think that generates the type of enthusiasm to have those people come out and vote for you. Kind of an issue that we see with Joe Biden, where if you don't have that strong enthusiasm and committed support, you can end up underperforming what the polls might indicate heading into these contests. We'll see if that is the case or not for Steyer. And then you also have Elizabeth Warren, who's been fading back in the polls. Her campaign is almost on life support at this point in time. I really liked what Warren did on the debate stage here that we had right before heading into the Nevada caucus, and that perhaps does enough to push her into that upper tier. She kind of just went guns blazing out there on the debate stage, going nuclear on everyone, throwing as much Oppo research that her debate preparation had gotten her ready for to just go out there and say, this is it. It's now or never for the Elizabeth Warren campaign. So we're just going to leave it all out there on the debate stage. I have a lot of respect for that. And it seems like the vast majority of people felt like Elizabeth Warren was able to go on and have the strongest debate performance out of any of the candidates. So it is possible that she could get the kind of boost heading into Nevada that we saw Klobuchar get, for instance, heading into the prior result in New Hampshire following her strong debate performance. So there's just so much going on heading into this race. The polling has been relatively close among those next 5 options, and they all have pros and cons as to why they might have success heading into this race. So enough rambling. It is finally time for me to actually put pen to paper and write down who I think is going to get second and third place. So in this instance, I'll start with just outside of third place and then go into those final predictions. So I think Klobuchar doesn't quite make it into the final cut, given, again, her relative weakness among the diverse voters. I don't think Tom Steyer is going to finish in the top 3 because I don't think the kind of support that you get from flooding the airwaves with advertisements is the kind of commitment that shows up and participates in something like a caucus, which takes quite a bit of time and effort. And again, I don't think Steyer has necessarily proven that he can do that. He didn't do all that well in the Iowa caucus either. And then also just the perception of your voters thinking that you can go on and win the nomination. I don't think that Steyer voters have that belief that he could probably go on and do that. So that's another potential detractor from him. And I feel like Steyer is likely to underperform where the polls have him right now in Nevada. And then also just outside of that top 3, this is what I had the toughest time with, that 3rd and 4th place slot, but I think I'm going to have to go with Joe Biden sliding just outside of the top 3, even though I think there are factors that can benefit him in having more success in Nevada than what he had in the first 2 states. We just haven't seen it in terms of his voters going out and supporting him on election day. He's vastly underperformed the polls, and I think that potentially happens again here in Nevada. He almost felt like an afterthought on the debate stage up there. Not a whole lot of time was spent by the other candidates going after Biden like they had in many of the other prior debates when Joe Biden was the front runner back at that point in time. So then that leaves us with Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg. So I'm going to head into 3rd place here, and I think that it is going to be Pete Buttigieg. Now, the reason why I feel like Pete is going to get 3rd is because out of all of the candidates here that are kind of competing in that 2nd and 3rd place arena, he's been the one that has consistently outperformed the polls, but I don't think that he's had the ground game and effort put into Nevada like we saw from him clearly in Iowa and New Hampshire, so that likely leads to him taking a step back. But there still appears to be a committed Pete Buttigieg coalition that's enthusiastic about going and supporting him on Election Day. We saw it in the first 2 states. Perhaps we get another surprise here in Nevada, but also I think another detractor for him not finishing in that 2nd place slot is his relative weakness among those more diverse voters, which probably means he takes a step back in that instance. So then in 2nd place, perhaps a little bit of a surprise, I'm putting Elizabeth Warren. The polling hasn't necessarily been indicative of Warren necessarily having a ton of success heading into Nevada, but I feel like she's had the ground game to have success in the state for many months now. She had an extremely strong debate performance, and she did relatively well in the Iowa caucus. She didn't compete right at the top with Sanders and Buttigieg, but still she was in that upper tier, kind of separating herself from the rest of the pack, being Biden and Klobuchar in that instance. And I also think she does have the kind of enthusiastic supporters that are perhaps a little bit more likely to show up and vote in a caucus as opposed to some of these candidates that I had just outside of the top 3, individuals like a Biden, Steyer, and perhaps a Klobuchar. And I really feel like that strong debate performance is going to be a very strong positive catalyst for Warren heading into the Nevada caucus, like we saw Klobuchar have in New Hampshire. So that's how I'm picking the top 3 in this instance. I don't have all that much confidence about my 2nd, 3rd place. I feel like you could really make any argument for the next 5 candidates behind Sanders to potentially finish in either of those slots. It's going to be fascinating to see what actually takes place in the Nevada caucus. And for Sanders, I would say an extremely strong showing would be winning by double digits. It's certainly on the table as a possibility. And if you're a Sanders supporter, it shouldn't just be, oh, it's good enough to get 1st place. He needs to start proving that he can get a margin of victory in these results so that he can start accumulating those pledged delegates. Because if he doesn't get past 1,990 pledged delegates heading into the convention, then it could be a situation where he maybe doesn't even end up winning the nomination, even if he does have the plurality, the most pledged delegates. And with Nevada being the kind of state where Sanders should be able to have success in, and with all the positive momentum that's been going towards him over the past couple of weeks, one would figure that Sanders should be able to finish with a decent margin of victory out there in that contest. So that's going to wrap this one up, guys. I'm not extremely confident in what I have here with my top 3, but this is what I'm committing to. Hopefully it ends up turning out, but we'll have to see what happens after the fact. And I hope to see you guys back here for future videos as I go through and recap exactly what happened in those Nevada caucuses. So I appreciate you stopping by and hope to see you back here for my next video.